Jack dies the way modern romance was always destined to kill someone, through weaponized stupidity and blind optimism. The poor guy finally thinks his life is turning around when his online girlfriend messages him saying she can see him from a cafe nearby. This is already suspicious because no good decision in anime history has ever started with "my online girlfriend says she's watching me." But Jack has the survival instincts of a moth flying toward a flamethrower. He rushes toward the cafe with all the emotional stability of a golden retriever hearing the word walk. Then she tells him to stop. Not because she loves him, not because she wants a dramatic reunion. No. She wants him to run in circles 3 times. And Jack obeys instantly. That's the first thing you need to understand about this story. Human dignity is not a currency accepted in this universe. The moment he completes his little sidewalk ritual, a truck obliterates him. Not hits him, not clips him. The man gets turned into downloadable content. But somehow he survives the impact because apparently fate looked at him and decided humiliation still had room to grow. Then, just to make absolutely certain he stays dead, a meteor crashes directly onto him. Truck-kun wasn't enough. The cosmos itself wanted participation credit. That opening perfectly summarizes the energy of the entire series. Every joke escalates past reason until logic taps out and leaves the building. Jack wakes up in a bizarre afterlife that feels less like heaven and more like a government office designed by people addicted to slot machines. Souls are floating around, waiting for reincarnation assignments, while cosmic staff members treat death like a customer service industry. Immediately, Jack notices some random guy nearby who casually says this is his second time there before flying away on a jetpack. No explanation, no emotional reaction. Just been here before energy. Jack follows him through a giant tube because at this point, curiosity is the only thing stronger than his self respect. On the other side, he discovers reincarnation is basically an auction house for dead idiots. People get evaluated based on how useful or entertaining they were during previous lives. One guy gets mocked because his reincarnated life achieved absolutely nothing. Nobody wants him. The room practically smells of cosmic disappointment. Eventually, some weird alien creature buys him, and the dude immediately devolves into bacteria. That's the level of respect this afterlife gives failure. You become microscopic humiliation. Then, Jack arrives on stage. Everybody gets excited because he's a human from Earth, which apparently is rare enough to count as premium imported merchandise. Different worlds immediately want him for their own settings. But then they inspect his soul and discover it's irregular, and the atmosphere changes instantly. That word, irregular, becomes one of the story's funniest recurring concepts because it basically means this man is going to derail reality itself. Nobody wants him anymore because his soul is too unstable. He isn't a heroic chosen one. He isn't secretly overpowered. He's cosmic malware. So naturally, he gets thrown into a giant gacha machine to determine his fate. And that's where the real insanity begins. Inside the machine, he meets the goddess. Now, this goddess is one of the smartest parts of the series because she completely avoids the standard gentle, nurturing anime deity stereotype. Instead, she feels like an exhausted office worker, trapped managing infinite reincarnations while also trying to watch her favorite television programs. Jack sees her and immediately starts flirting because the man possesses terminal brain damage. She explains the rules of reincarnation while he openly comments on how beautiful she is. Then he asks about her chest size. This results in immediate violence. And honestly, she shows incredible restraint for someone with the power to erase souls. Their chemistry becomes the central engine of the entire story. Not romance exactly, at least not initially, but a bizarre dynamic built on mutual irritation, weird affection, psychological warfare, and endless punishment. Jack constantly pushes boundaries. The goddess constantly threatens murder. Somehow, this becomes wholesome. She shows him footage of his death, and Jack's first concern is whether she got consent to film him. That single joke tells you everything about his character. Most people would ask existential questions. Jack argues privacy law with a deity. The goddess reveals the truth. His girlfriend was hanging out with her actual boyfriend while trolling him for entertainment. Even worse, Jack has repeatedly suffered accidents every single time he attempted romance. At this point, his life stops sounding tragic and starts sounding statistically impossible. The goddess explains this place exists for people who died miserable deaths. They get another chance through reincarnation. He can become almost anything he wants. This is where the anime fully mutates into anti isekai satire. Most reincarnation stories treat fantasy fulfillment like sacred scripture. Hero powers, harems, demon kings, magic kingdoms. This series takes every cliche and treats it like a cheap toy thrown into a blender. Jack asks for the typical fantasy protagonist setup: overpowered hero abilities, beautiful girls, adventure, glory. The goddess calmly informs him the waiting list is over 60,000 years. Because of course it is. Think about how brilliant that joke actually is. Every isekai protagonist wants the exact same thing, so naturally the demand would be astronomical. The story weaponizes genre logic against itself. The goddess offers alternatives. Worlds abandoned halfway through development. Villages where NPCs repeat one sentence forever. Fantasy settings where everyone secretly laughs at the hero. Demon King timelines with shorter queues but terrible social conditions. It's like browsing terrible apartment listings online, except the apartments are entire universes. Jack keeps rejecting options because despite being a desperate loser, he still has standards. The goddess becomes increasingly frustrated because she just wants to watch television. Finally, after endless debate, Jack decides he doesn't need to become the hero himself. He wants to become the hero's rib. Not his companion, not his weapon, not his advisor. A rib. The goddess is stunned, and honestly, so is the audience. But Jack's logic is horrifyingly consistent. If he becomes part of the hero's body, then every beautiful woman hugging the hero will technically be touching him too. That sentence should legally count as psychological warfare. So off he goes. And somehow this turns into an entire fantasy epic. The hero becomes wildly successful. Monsters die. Kingdoms get saved. Beautiful girls surround him constantly. Jack experiences all of this secondhand while existing as internal skeletal commentary. For a brief moment, the story almost resembles a conventional fantasy anime. Then, everything detonates. Jack eventually reveals himself to the hero. The hero panics and attempts to remove him by ripping out one of his ribs. Wrong rib. The removed rib transforms into a clone. Now there are two heroes. Then more ribs awaken. Soon, every rib has developed individual consciousness, personalities, goals, and ideological conflicts. Entire wars erupt between skeletal duplicates. The fifth right rib battles the seventh left rib, hard enough to destroy planets. This series escalates jokes with terrifying commitment. What began as a horny loophole evolves into rib based geopolitical warfare. The goddess watches all this afterward through replay footage, while Jack casually explains events like a man discussing sports highlights. That contrast is the secret sauce of the comedy. The universe treats nonsense with absolute seriousness. One rib creates clones using additional ribs. Another wears a mind control mask. Two ribs fall in love. entire civilizations collapse. Meanwhile, Jack is just happy because a heroine bit him once. Eventually, the world collapses under the weight of skeletal civil war. Jack ends his life as fertilizer after being buried by a farming girl. And somehow, he still isn't satisfied. So, he returns to the goddess. This becomes the core structure of the story. Jack reincarnates into increasingly absurd forms, experiences complete narrative breakdowns, dies unsatisfied, and returns to banter with the goddess. The reincarnation gimmicks become progressively deranged. He becomes a hermit crab. Now, a lesser comedy series would stop at funny crab protagonist. This one turns the crab into a legendary weapon tied to heroes, sea goddesses, curses, and world ending monsters. Jack saves a sea goddess named Latasha. He battles giant creatures. He inherits ultimate abilities. He defeats the ruler of purgatory. But, despite literally saving the world, his biggest regret remains. No girl equipped him. That's the emotional thesis statement of this anime. Not glory, not heroism, not meaning. He wants affection so badly that even being used as RPG equipment counts as intimacy. And strangely, it works emotionally. Because beneath all the absurdity, Jack's loneliness is genuine. He isn't evil, he isn't malicious, he's just catastrophically pathetic. The goddess slowly begins recognizing this. Their relationship deepens through endless cycles of violence and conversation. She electrocutes him constantly, but she also listens to him. He cooks for her, brings her gifts, tries to impress her. The funniest part is how naturally domestic their interactions become, despite existing outside reality itself. Then the reincarnations get even worse. Jack becomes a door in the Demon King's castle, a clock hand, the voice inside a hero's head, a tomato, a lock, ninja scroll string, literal jealousy. Every scenario becomes an opportunity for total narrative collapse. As the Demon King's door, Jack kills generals accidentally by sneezing due to cat allergies. The Demon King keeps him around because he thinks the voice in the door is just stress hallucinations. That detail alone feels handcrafted by lunatics. Then Jack accidentally kills the hero too by sneezing again after spotting cat ears. The anime runs on the principle that any setup can become catastrophic through sheer stupidity. As a clock hand, Jack develops hatred toward couples hanging around the tower. Together with the other reincarnated clock hands, he manipulates time and launches magical attacks at romantic civilians. One of the funniest recurring themes is Jack's absolute war against public displays of affection. His loneliness becomes a supernatural force. Then there's the tomato arc, which sounds fake even while explaining it. Jack becomes a tomato hero fighting the Demon King alongside an onion old man, a tofu martial artist, an evil dragon, and assorted vegetables. The story treats this vegetable RPG parody with complete dramatic sincerity. Emotional speeches happen between produce items. World ending attacks occur while discussing food. Jack reaches level 872 because apparently he secretly enabled broken leveling systems when nobody was watching. The goddess reacts exactly like the audience, utter disbelief mixed with exhausted acceptance. One of the smartest things about the series is how self aware it is regarding anime production. Characters openly comment on reused animation scenes, budget shortcuts, and genre cliches. It feels like a parody made by people who deeply understand exactly why these tropes exist. But underneath the insanity, the relationship between Jack and the goddess continues evolving. That's what keeps the story from becoming random nonsense. The reincarnations are absurd, but emotionally, they all orbit the same idea. Jack keeps searching for meaning through connection. And the goddess, despite acting cruel, keeps becoming more attached. She starts caring whether he survives. She watches his lives while waiting for him to return. She gets jealous occasionally. She rewards him, threatens him, misses him. Their dynamic slowly mutates from annoyed administrator and problem customer into something resembling dysfunctional companionship. Then things become existentially stupid again. Jack becomes the feelings of jealousy inside lonely men watching couples kiss. Not a person, an emotion. At this point, the anime has transcended genre entirely. As jealousy itself, he influences struggling entertainers and bitter loners. One man becomes a famous comedian by weaponizing romantic frustration into performance art. This arc is secretly brilliant satire. The world begins fearing public affection because couples who kiss publicly supposedly break up afterward. Society becomes emotionally distorted through weaponized insecurity. And honestly, that might be the most realistic thing in the whole show. Meanwhile, the goddess continues becoming emotionally unstable around Jack. At one point, she desperately wants physical affection after watching romantic movies. Jack refuses because he correctly predicts she'll kill him afterward, which she absolutely would. Their relationship constantly balances between genuine affection and lethal chaos. And that's why it works. Neither character changes completely. The goddess remains violent and temperamental. Jack remains shameless and weird, but over time they become each other's emotional constant. Every reincarnation world is temporary. Every fantasy collapses eventually. Every identity ends. But he always comes back to her. That recurring structure accidentally creates emotional intimacy. Even the gods of the multiverse begin noticing them. During one meeting, higher beings discuss how reincarnation exists to evolve worlds through external influence. Jack draws their attention because his irregularity keeps causing unpredictable developments. He isn't a chosen hero, he's narrative corruption, a cosmic anomaly powered entirely by loneliness and bad decisions. And somehow he changes every world he touches. Not always for the better, usually not for the better, but definitely memorably. The series constantly walks a razor thin line between genius parody and complete idiocy. Sometimes it crosses both simultaneously. The humor style is especially fascinating because it rejects normal pacing entirely. Most comedies build carefully toward punchlines. This story machine guns absurd developments non stop until your brain stops resisting. For example, a lock fights God using lemon juice and cooking oil while imprisoning a fish demon king folded 6 times inside a treasure chest. That sentence feels AI generated after severe head trauma. Yet, within the anime, it somehow follows perfectly logical progression. The series weaponizes commitment. No matter how stupid the premise becomes, the characters treat events with deadly sincerity. That contrast generates the comedy. Another surprisingly strong aspect is how the anime satirizes power fantasy culture itself. Jack repeatedly gains influence, fame, or absurd abilities, but none of it fulfills him permanently. Being overpowered doesn't cure loneliness. Saving worlds doesn't erase emotional emptiness. Even after becoming legendary repeatedly, his desires remain painfully small. Companionship, recognition, physical affection, someone waiting for him. The goddess slowly becomes the only being who consistently acknowledges him across every life. Which means the story secretly transforms into a romance somewhere beneath all the explosions and vegetable warfare. A deeply cursed romance. But still, the visual imagination of the series also deserves attention because every reincarnation feels like a completely different anime genre stitched together with duct tape and caffeine. One arc resembles fantasy epics. Another becomes mecha nonsense. Another feels like slice of life domestic comedy. Another turns into philosophical absurdism. The world building intentionally breaks itself repeatedly. And somehow that chaos reflects Jack's irregular soul perfectly. He doesn't fit anywhere, so every world bends strangely around him. By the time mysterious gods begin spying on Jack and the goddess near the end, the audience realizes something important. Their bizarre relationship has become more compelling than the reincarnation gimmick itself. We want to see them interact. We want to watch her threaten him over tea, watch him cook terrible meals, watch them argue over fantasy worlds, watch cosmic entities slowly develop emotional dependency. That's the real trick this story pulls. It disguises emotional continuity beneath weaponized stupidity. The anime absolutely knows it's ridiculous. It mocks itself constantly. It shreds isekai cliches with malicious joy. But it also understands something many parody series forget. There still needs to be emotional glue underneath the jokes. Jack's endless reincarnations matter because he always returns carrying new experiences, failures, gifts, and regrets back to the goddess. Their shared space outside reincarnation gradually becomes the only stable home either of them has, which is honestly kind of beautiful in the dumbest possible way. By the end, the series feels like someone fed every anime genre into a blender alongside internet culture, existential loneliness, MORPG logic, and sleep deprivation. And yet, against all odds, it develops a strange sincerity. Jack starts as a pathetic loser killed by cosmic slapstick while trying to meet a fake girlfriend. But over countless, ridiculous reincarnations, he slowly becomes something more. A walking disaster capable of affecting entire universes simply because he refuses to stop seeking connection. And the goddess? She begins as an irritated divine administrator. But through Jack's endless nonsense, she slowly becomes emotionally human. That's the hidden genius beneath the insanity. This isn't really a story about reincarnation. It's about two weird immortal idiots accidentally becoming important to each other while the multiverse burns around them. Everything else, the crab warfare, the rib clones, the tomato armies, the jealous comedians, the Demon King doors, the ninja olive oil scrolls, that's just decorative psychological damage. And somehow, impossibly gloriously, it works.